We have this image of a chapel taken in the misty, foggy morning. I guess it was around 8 o'clock in the morning on a fall day. And it was taken on the western edge of Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And you see the chapel across the pond there. And I'm going to work with this and see what we can come up with using just Lightroom and one or two other plugins, and I'm going to try to go pretty quickly with this so I'm not boring you. First thing I'm going to do is make sure the process that I'm using and the camera profile I'm using are what I normally use. This was shot with the Canon 5D, and the camera calibration that I normally use for outdoor shots is camera landscape. That had a slight effect on it, not all that much. The next thing I notice is I have some dust spots down here, and I'm sure I have others, but rather than go through this whole laborious process, I'll get rid of a few of them and leave it to you to take care of all of them when you decide whatever you want to do with this picture. Okay, so I got the dust spots. Next thing I will normally do is to go into the lens corrections, and what I'm going to do here is enable profile corrections, remove chromatic aberration, and go with auto upright, which, as you see, leveled out that building and that sort of thing there. If we look at what profile it selected, it was a Canon. It was a 24 to 70 millimeter. So it knew right away exactly what lens and what camera was used there, and it automatically picked it up. Let's go over to the basic panel now. We can see that the white balance as shot, remember I use auto white balance in the camera, and doing that, shooting a raw image, it's going to decide what it feels is the correct white balance for this picture. I may want to come in here and customize the white balance, although I have to tell you, in all likelihood, I'll return to the as shot. How I would normally do it, I was pick the eyedropper and go find something that is supposed to be white, darker white or gray. Now watch the temperature slider and the tint slider. See if they move. They move slightly. What I think we have here is now a greenish tint. I'm not so sure that I care for that, so I'm going to just hit the magenta slider a little bit to get back to what I consider to be reasonable. Let's see, on the custom and on the as shot, it showed as 24. That's, to me, a little too heavy, so I'm going to bring it down to 20, and I think that's a pretty neutral scene here. Look at the histogram. What the histogram tells you is it's a relatively light scene, but absolutely no whites and certainly no blacks. If you're looking at the fog, I think it's safe to say when you look through the fog there are no whites and no blacks. So we're going to let that go at that. However, there is some gradation in these lighter areas, and I really want to be able to work with that. So I'm going to take my highlight slider and bring it all the way down. You see the difference? You see what happened? We got a little gradation in all this, and I'm starting to see a yellow glow just above the hills here, and in the reflection as well. That to me is pretty important. It didn't change much on the histogram, it just compacted it even more. If I try to go with contrast and open this up, I'm not really getting what I want. if I try to go with vibrance, I may boost those yellows because it just tends to boost areas that are not dominant colors, and I kind of like that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here, and this gets pretty important to me, the next thing I'm going to do here is try to make those greens appear a little more lifelike. Right now they're so muted, it's hard to even tell there is a lawn there, and the trees are partially turning color. So I go down to HSL is how I work with this. And the first thing I'm going to do is try to pick out greens, even though they're mostly yellow at this point, and move them more into the green spectrum. I'm going to adjust the hue right now, and I've clicked on the hue painter, and I'm going to click on what I feel is actually green. And I think this area right in here qualifies. So I will press down and move up with the mouse, and what you can see here, take a look. I have automatically moved some yellow portions of the hue more towards green, and I have taken the green portions and moved them more towards an aqua. But to me, the end result of this is that we have something that's a little more reminiscent of true green. I'm going to come in here and take the hue change of the green a little less obvious. Now I'm going to go to saturation. And I have three things really that I want to accomplish here. First of all, I'd like to add some saturation to the greens. And we can do that right here. Just bring that slider up to where it looks kind of natural. All right. I would like to add some saturation to the yellow fringes above the hills. So I'm going to take this little detector, place it on the yellow where it seems the yellow is dominant, and draw it up, and lo and behold, we have increased the saturation of yellow. Last thing is, if there's any remnant of blue sky left in this thing, I'd like to bring that up as well. So I'm coming down here to where I think we have the biggest presence of blue, and I will bring that up. And look at what we have now. We have a photograph that I think the colors are a little closer to what we might expect. I don't know if you would agree, but I think that's the way I feel about it. We can go to effects. If you have the newer version of Lightroom, here's one that you're probably not going to accomplish in any plugin that readily, at least not that understandably, is dehaze. Now I have to tell you that this picture was intended to be hazy, but I don't know if I intended it to be this hazy. I'm going to try the new feature in Lightroom and bring up that dehaze just a tad. I like this. It's still hazy. I see that stratification up here of the cloud layer. It all appears to be hazy, and I think that's a quality that I really like. If you'll notice, go back to basic here. You'll notice I didn't do any clarity. Clarity is going to fight haze, but I would like these trees and buildings to be dominant irregardless of the haze. So I'm going to come over here to the adjustment brush, bring it up, and zero everything out. And what I want to do, now this is going to be overdone here, folks. I want to jack up the clarity And I think right here would be an appropriate size for a paintbrush. I'm going to leave the feathers very soft so it's not so apparent what I'm doing it. Flow, I'm going to have it 100% so it's not choppy. Density, I think we're going to go to 50%. And if we need to reduce the clarity from that point on, we'll just do it up here with the clarity slider. Okay, so I'm going to start painting this clarity in to these relatively dominant features. All right, see how we're doing this here? We can get something out of it that just enhances the photograph a little without having to change the whole thing. Another thing that I will probably do is add some sunspots just to add some interest. So I'm going to come here and get a new mask, reduce the clarity, and I'm just going to boost the exposure where I'm going to hit it, and maybe the color temperature, I'll warm it up where I'm going to hit it. Same thing, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, well, wouldn't it be nice if that tree there had a little sunspot? This one, this foreground here, maybe a little bit on that tree, and I think on this crimson part of that tree, right there. Okay, you may think I'm nuts for what I just did, but let's just say this. Let's drop the exposure greatly and drop the temperature. So we really didn't do that much with this. What we did accomplish is, let's turn it off. See the difference? I think the sunspots actually were too heavy, so I'm gonna come down here to 0.3, and I lost my warming effect on that, so I am going to warm it up slightly. All right, so I'm kind of done with the adjustment brush. I have two adjustments in there. One is right over here, and it affected the clarity of that area. The other one is right over here, and it added some sunspots where I felt it would add some interest to the picture. All right, okay, let's close that out. My next thing that I'm going to do now is I am going to go into a plugin, and I am going to see what I can do to just bring out the overall detail of this picture without butchering it. So how I do that is I'm going to go under Photo, Edit In, and what I'm going to choose to do this with is Intensify Pro, which is a plugin, and some of you may have this, some of you may not. I don't know. It's preparing that file. Now, Intensify Pro comes with all sorts of different presets. There's these default presets that you can see here, and you'll notice some of them I have starred. In the past, I have used these ones that are starred quite a bit, so they fall into my favorites classification. Let's look at what can be done here with this. First, Pro Quality. Well, that's a little too edgy, but we may come back to that. Natural Enhance, that's more of a color thing. I think it's kind of beautiful. I like the part of the sky here that has a little magenta mixed in. You see that? And it does bring that out. Problem being, it kind of reduces the fog and the mist, but we may come back to that. Strong indoor details? No, it's not indoors. Architectural details? No. I use these two when I do real estate photography, and they really help a lot. Let's go down to soft and balanced. That's just too soft for me. Okay, let's go down to enhanced landscape. Well, I suppose for something that might be useful, but I'm going to come back to natural enhance. And this is a little over the top for me, so I'm going to take the amount slider and bring it down. That's what I want to do with that. Okay, and let's compare. Okay, this is with it, that's without it. We have added a little bit of zip to the photo without destroying the fogginess, and I like that. So I'm going to accept that by saying apply, and it will be coming back into Lightroom, and that's kind of what we're looking for. Okay, that is the stage of this photograph at the moment. After all the processing that we've done so far, I'm seeing that a few more dust spots have creeped in. They've made their ugly appearance. I'm just going to go over them right now because it's just part of finishing things up in manners that make sense. And we'll just get that going. I just don't want the dust spots to get in the way of appreciating whatever the final work of this picture is. Okay, it's good enough for now. We're looking at this, and I'm thinking about a couple different things. Alright, one of the things that I haven't done yet was to apply noise reduction and sharpening. The reason I didn't do that is because there's a tendency when you go into some of these plugins that you're going to rebuild noise. So for me, I want to catch it all at once, and this would be the time to do it. What I try to do is locate a region where there is both sharpness and the prevalence of noise, because I need to control those independently. I go down to 100% magnification, and for me, this area right here is pretty telling. You see all this noise that has accumulated both in the trees and in the sky. Well, first of all, one thing we know is this is probably not much in the way of color noise. Normally we bring this up to about 25%, and you can bring it up like crazy. It's not going to get rid of all the noise. It's just that cameras normally don't need more than 25-30%, and there's no point overdoing that. But we're left with a lot of luminance noise. Look here, look at all that noise. So I'm going to start moving the amount slider ever so gradually until that noise disappears. And for me, I'm satisfied at about a setting of about 30. Yeah, that's kind of satisfying for me. And what I do, and what I have learned from Serge Ramelli, is rather than overthinking this whole process, for sharpening, I take the number 100 and I deduct whatever luminance setting I used, which is 30, and that's what I use for sharpening. I automatically go up to 70. Now, that's obviously bringing some noise back in the picture. It looks great on the steeple but it really looks bad back here. So we need to mask all these areas out. So I hold down my Option key on a PC, that's the Alt key, hold it down, and come over here and move the masking until the areas that I don't want to sharpen turn black. The areas I want to sharpen, they're going to stay white. There it is. That's what I am left with. Okay, I'm going to go back to fitting the screen. So now we've removed the noise and we have added the sharpening. On almost all of my pictures, there is one effect that I always apply, and that would be to have post-crop vignetting. I haven't cropped this picture. Main reason, I don't like to have horizons on the center line, and by having more of the pond exposed than the sky, that puts the horizon line above center, and that's suitable to me. I don't want to crop out this tree or the edge of that building, and having this space here moves the chapel more to an area where the rule of thirds would apply. Okay, but normally I would come in here. I have a preset. Let's see what that preset does. I have a preset that's what I call my starting point, my vignette starting point. Watch on the right-hand side how the sliders will change. Okay, do I like that? Well, I don't know. What's happened here is I'm moving in the midpoint. Okay, I'm closing down. And I'm also not changing the roundness, and I am adding some feather. Okay? I don't want anybody to know that I am actually doing a vignette. I don't want it that obvious. Before I made this recording, I tried, let's go vignette out to white, because it would give it a moody look to it. If I did this and I changed the roundness more towards a rectangle, and I actually changed this more towards this, I said, well, wouldn't that be nice for a greeting card or something? But you know what? All of a sudden I've changed my mind. I'm going back to my standard vignette, and I'm calling that it. Check out the histogram. You'll notice it's very, very mid-tone. Absolutely no whites and absolutely no blacks. For such a sensitive picture, I'm satisfied with that. And that's it. I've used one plugin, Intensify Pro, and we'll see what we do with the next workout image whenever that gets posted. Hey folks, try this for yourself, but do whatever you want, and then post the results over here in the user group. What I would ask you to do is to make a new entry in the user group rather than add a comment, because if you try to add a comment, you're going to have very few characters available to you to explain what you've done, and we'd all like to know exactly what you did. Okay.